What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Early Edge NFL Pick Show, brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Will Brinson here, along with our usual outstanding crew, Larry Hartstein, Mike McClure, and RJ White, joining me to give out picks for championship weekend. Insane that it is already championship weekend, but here we are, guys. We only have 2 games to get to. We'll give out plenty of picks, player props for every single team. But let's get to some takeaways from the playoffs so far. RJ, you're always optimistic. Are these teams playing great football?
Well, if there's any optimism to be had, it's that maybe we'll see some better football from them, because I don't think anybody's playing their best football right now. The Chiefs had 212 yards of offense, 4.2 yards per play, and I expected better from a healthy secondary against Houston, even though they won that game pretty handily. Buffalo's defense gave up 7.3 yards per play, had virtually no passing game, survived thanks to a consistent run game and key turnovers. Philly's offense, Saquon or bust right now. Both games, they've been even on yards per play against their opponent. Again, turnovers key there. Washington gave up 7.7 yards per play, 30 first downs against Detroit. Their defense was destroyed when they weren't getting turnovers. So, I mean, at their peak, any of these teams I think can win the Super Bowl, but none of them are playing at their peak right now. I wouldn't be surprised by any result on Sunday. Anyone getting blown out, any Super Bowl matchup at this point.
I hear you on all of that, RJ, except for I want to talk about Jaden Daniels is playing his best football, doing everything he can to keep that Washington team alive. And I just think we have to continue to talk about it. I know he's a rookie. I know we're going to talk about it a lot. I truly believe he's the best quarterback in the NFC, and really the reason that this team is where they are right now, despite how bad that defense is. When you look at that defense the way it played last week, it looked like it did the first few weeks of the season, not the defense that was closer to league average down the stretch. So for me, it's all about Jaden Daniels here. He changes the game because of what he's a threat to do with his legs. He's got the deep ball with accuracy. I think he's the best quarterback in the NFC. Love Jaden Daniels here.
Yeah, and you can't blitz him, Mike. He completed 80% against the blitz versus the Lions. Also took apart the Eagles' blitz in that 36-33 win. I know rookie QBs are 0-5 in the conference title games. They've lost those games by an average of 13 points. But like you said, Mike, this is not a regular rookie quarterback. What he's doing with only 1 sack in 2 games in the playoffs, no turnovers, 4 touchdowns, completing 77% of his throws. He's getting the ball out at the right time. You saw that big play to Terry McLaurin. That was because he got the ball out right away, and then dropping a dime, a 42-yarder to De'Ami Brown over 2 outstretched defenders. He's converting 4th downs at 81%, which is a number that we've never seen. And I think he loves having the coaches behind him, knowing they can be aggressive, they can be daring, they have nothing to lose. To me, it's all about Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, and give Dan Quinn some credit, too, because he has been hyper-aggressive on those 4th downs, and he's trusted his rookie quarterback. By the way, I believe Daniels, the only rookie quarterback to start in one of these conference championship games without a top 5 scoring defense. Like, all of those other rookie quarterbacks who made it this far had really good defenses. One thing that stood out to me from last weekend is, you always see those graphics pop up. It's like, did we win that well, or did we lose that bad? And you try to figure out which team should have won. Well, the difference in the divisional round was turnovers. And I know that's kind of like no bleep Sherlock exclusive, right? I mean, like, that's football. But I mean, we're talking about the 4 teams that won had 0 turnovers. And if you look at the EPA stuff, they really, all 4 of them could have lost kind of easily if the ball had bounced a different way. And so I think that sort of all sums it up, right? Like, you're going to need to get lucky. You're going to need to protect the ball, especially in these games, and especially with everything that is on the line. We have 2 awesome games, though. One's a divisional matchup, and one is like basically the biggest rivalry of the last few years. But we'll start after the break with Jaden Daniels, the rookie quarterback, going up against Jalen Hurts, who suffered an injury. How will that affect our bets for this game? We will tell you all about Commanders and Eagles coming up next on The Early Edge. Welcome back to the Early Edge NFL Pick Show Championship Weekend Edition, Conference Championship Edition, I should say. Will Brinson, Larry Hartstein, Mike McClure, and RJ White. We're going to dive into both of these games at length, and we'll start in Philadelphia, where the Commanders are making a stunning appearance in the conference championship, and they make it as an underdog, a 6-point underdog to Philly. The Eagles favored by just under a touchdown with a total here of 47.5. RJ, if you got to go with a side or total, your best bet for this game, what are you going with?
I'm going to look at the first half and take the Commanders plus 3.5. These teams played 2 close games this year, with the home team riding big fourth quarters to a win. The last game got out to a weird start, a 4th down failure for Washington, one of the only ones all season, and 2 early fumbles lost that put them in an early hole. They were able to work their way back and win. Daniels looks like the much better quarterback of the 2 right now, which, like last week with Stafford, can help mitigate the Saquon domination that we saw in that game. Rams were only behind 3 at the break in that game, despite 2 long touchdown runs by Philly early. I think even if Philly does have success running the ball, we could be in for something similar here with a 3-point deficit at the half. So I like taking plus 3.5 in the first half for the Commanders.
Yeah, I have no doubt Saquon Barkley is going to run all over the Commanders like he's done to pretty much everyone, but I'm worried about Jalen Hurts and how effective he's going to be. And the one thing I know I can count on is that Jaden Daniels will not be intimidated by this defense. That was the 3rd worst EPA game that the Eagles had all season. So if people want to say, oh, the Bucs, the Lions, those defenses don't compare to the Eagles, he has already torched the Eagles for 5 touchdowns. And like you said, RJ, they had a failed 4th down, which they don't usually fail on that. I think the Eagles are going to escape. They're going to get by with the home field, but only by a field goal. I'm going to take a full 6 for the full game.
Yeah, what did I say before the playoffs began? That if you're going to back a dog, you better believe they can win. I think the Commanders can go win this game. You know what I mean? Like Jalen Hurts' injury, I know, he got back out there and looked a little more mobile. They bootlegged him a bit. I think those plays were almost by design to keep the Rams defense a little more honest and to prevent them from just like really, really trying to stack the box and not giving Jalen any credit whatsoever. And then you get like a week removed from that injury and maybe it's a little more sore, you're a little less likely to run. And Jaden Daniels, they're playing with house money here. And the guy just doesn't care. He doesn't back down from anything. I think Cliff Kingsbury's done a great job calling these games for the Commanders. Dan Quinn knows how to coach in big spots. Remember, he had a 28-3 lead on the Patriots in the Super Bowl when he was with the Falcons. So, there's a lot to like about this Commanders team, and I think Jaden Daniels has a real shot to get it done. I'm going to take the Commanders plus 6. I do think Philly maybe finds a way to win, but I think Washington is absolutely live here. Mike, any thoughts on the side or total for you?
I like the total. I'm going to go under the 47.5. I really expected this thing to probably sit around 46.5, just on the other side. 47 is not a massively key number, but it is still key. And when you look at this spot for Jaden Daniels, I have no doubt that he's going to find success, but I also know that it is definitely not the same situation as playing in a dome against that Lions defense at this state. And when you look at Tampa Bay, just stylistically, where you're not really able to run the ball, that does play into Jaden Daniels' strength. However, I do think they're more balanced here, but it's really about what the Eagles want to do too. They want to run the football with Saquon Barkley, keeping in mind we're also one play away from Kenny Pickett being the quarterback in this game with Jalen Hurts the way he's at. So for me, I just think it should be on the other side of that 47. I think it's going to play out like a 24-20 kind of game. So I want under 47.5 here.
Yeah, you mentioned Jalen Hurts. Let's get to our Eagles props. I'm on Jalen Hurts under 29.5 rush yards. I think it will be really surprising, given how well Saquon Barkley's run, if they even use the tush push when they get down there. You got some chances for kneeing it out if the Eagles have if the Eagles win a close one. And I just don't think we're going to see a ton of designed runs. I think to Mike's point, they are going to try to lean into Saquon Barkley, and just run the football with Saquon. He's been so explosive, and he can rip off those big runs, and they would prefer not to have Jalen Hurts run a ton. I think you've got something similar with your Eagles prop, RJ.
Yeah, I wanted to take a rushing under with Jalen Hurts as well to play because of his knee injury. I went with his longest rush under 11.5 yards. This is the one that has come in the most in his healthy games this year. I think he's hit the under 6 times on this number. The first Washington game, he didn't have a run over 9 yards, and he was healthy in that game. I'll hope for a similar outcome here if he's able to make it until the final whistle. And if he's not, he's going to have to get his long run in early, like Mike's talking about, because we might see Kenny Pickett in the second half. So I think this is probably the best way to attack his rushing props, is taking his longest run under 11.5 yards.
I'm taking Saquon's longest run to go over 21.5. It's a crazy number. Like all his props, you usually see this in the 16, 17 for most running backs, but he went for 78 and 62 last week. He cleared this easily in both matchups against the Commanders. Jahmyr Gibbs averaged 7.5 yards a carry, had a 33-yard run. And how about this? The Commanders are dead last in explosive rushes allowed. They give up more 20-plus rushes than any team in the NFL. Saquon over 21.5.
And I'm looking at Devontae Smith here on the receiving yards. I think this number's a little soft, but I think it really comes down to how you look at this game playing out. If you like all of us here on the show, we think Washington's going to be competitive, and that's critical for Devontae Smith. But this number at 48.5, I thought it should have been 55, 56 when you consider the situation with Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. If Jalen Hurts has limited mobility, we're talking about more throws in the pocket, not necessarily creating big plays downfield. And we're talking about stack boxes for Saquon Barkley. That's where I think Devontae Smith can really get that quick slant over the middle that we've seen him turn into big plays many, many times. And then if we get the competitive game or even the scenario where they fall behind, that is where he's going to get peppered with targets. So I just thought it was about 6 yards off here, went over 48.5 for Devontae Smith.
All right, let's head to the Washington side where, Larry, you and I both dig a little De'Ami Brown here. I've got De'Ami's receptions over 3.5. I mean, if you just look at the stats the last 3 weeks, we saw Olamide Zaccheaus come in and sort of play the number 2 role. It looked like De'Ami was the gadget guy down the field, and that has completely shifted over the last couple of weeks. De'Ami's out here trash talking Amon-Ra St. Brown about their draft status. It's wild to watch. He is more of a complete receiver, I think, in his current role than he is necessarily a deep threat. And just the way that he's been targeted, how defenses are going to focus in on Terry McLaurin, knowing that's the go-to guy for Jaden Daniels. I think De'Ami Brown clears 4 receptions easily here. You like attacking a different angle.
Yeah, I like that play a lot, but I'm going to go with the yards. He's had 4 targets now or more in 6 straight. They throw it to him deep, 42-yarder against the Lions. He is the deep threat, but they also will give it to him on the screens because he has great athletic ability, great skill, and we're finally seeing it. I mean, this is the guy, they knew he had all the physical tools coming out of North Carolina, but finally Noah Brown gets hurt. He gets the opportunity. What I really love is Terry McLaurin was talking him up before any of this happened, and he's gone for 187 yards in the playoffs. In the 2 playoff games, leads the team. Over 41.5 is my play.
I'm going to take Brian. Yeah, I'm going to take Brian Robinson over 9.5 rush attempts at plus 100. He's missed this 3 times this year, 2 due to injury and 1 in week 18 with Washington managing workloads. He had 16 carries in a close, low-scoring first meeting with Philly and 10 in a come-from-behind win the second time. Basically, if he's out on the field and he's healthy, he's getting to 10 carries. So I'm interested to know why the market seems to be betting this under, because it was minus 115 yesterday. It's down to plus 100 now. I think that getting even odds on this prop is great for Brian Robinson to go over 9.5 rush attempts.
And I'm going to back Jaden Daniels anytime touchdown here, plus 210. I thought this number should have been around plus 175. And it really comes down to how I think that Washington scores touchdowns in this game. I don't think it's necessarily going to be the 50-yard deep ball to De'Ami Brown or Terry McLaurin that gets them there against this defense. I think they're going to have to move the football kind of methodically down the field, likely landing in the red zone. And at this point, there's no limitations on Jaden Daniels. I know he dealt with some injury stuff throughout the season. You throw all that out the window. I think if you want to be in the red zone with Jaden Daniels, you want to give him an RPO. You want to give him some sort of option. So I think this number is a little soft at plus 210 for Jaden Daniels anytime touchdown.
Well, I'll throw it to you guys quickly, too. You mentioned Jaden Daniels' anytime touchdown. Any interest in Jaden Daniels' first touchdown? I see him at about 13-1 out there. Every single Washington player, by the way, is 10-1 or higher, so they would qualify for our early edge pregame picks. Saquon plus 340, I see. Hurts 5-1, which I just hate. And then A.J. Brown 9-1. Any thoughts on a sleeper or a look there? I think Daniels at 13-1, Mike, is not a bad pick at all, especially if they get the ball first and use those read option stuff down by the goal line.
Yeah, I like Jaden Daniels' first touchdown. And as far as Saquon, I would just isolate Eagles' first touchdown. I think it's definitely going to Saquon considering the circumstances, unless you're talking deep ball. So, yeah, I would isolate the Eagles side only with Barkley and then Jaden overall.
Yeah, I think Barkley makes sense. I mean, plus 375, which is what I'm seeing at BetMGM, is a very low number, but it's one that might not be low enough just because we know that how likely he is to score from anywhere on the field. Maybe Dallas Goedert would be a way I'd look for the Eagles as well, plus 1,700. But since I'm taking the Commanders plus 3.5 in the first half, I've got to look at their end. So I'm looking at Brian Robinson at 12-1. I think that would be the first touchdown look that I would go with.
I'm going to go with the other guy in the backfield, Austin Eckler, the vet. They've seen his usage, increase in the postseason, and he's delivered. He's doing well as a runner. He's amazing as a receiver. We know that. And I think when you get down there with all the attention on Jaden Daniels running the ball, you could get Austin Eckler sneaking in there.
I'll tell you the other guy. We mentioned him, Larry, but I'm going to throw out as well. De'Ami Brown, 22-1. He hit it a couple of weeks ago for me. And I mean, the guy is a deep threat. Maybe they dial up some sort of sort of trick play design, like a shot play design to really throw the Eagles off. De'Ami Brown, a perfect look for that. All right, we have an absolute barn burner. It's like version 10 of this incredible matchup. Josh Allen takes down the Ravens, head into Arrowhead to play Patrick Mahomes. The Warlock himself will tell you our best bets of that game. Coming up next on The Early Edge. Welcome back to the Early Edge NFL Picks Show, Conference Championship Weekend Edition. Will Brinson, Larry Hartstein, Mike McClure, and R.J. White. We are getting the latest installment. I mean, it's just ridiculous at this point. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. It's got very, very strong Pistons, Bulls, 1990s vibes because the Bills seem to take care of business, but just can't do it in the playoffs. It's on CBS, 6:30 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. Going to be an incredible matchup, despite, Larry, what Andy Reid said. The Bills are not favored. The Chiefs are favored here, and the Chiefs are -2 with a total of 47.5. What's your favorite bet for the side or total here?
It's going to be over the total with these two quarterbacks and perfect weather conditions for Kansas City at this time of year. We're talking temperatures in the 30s, no wind, no rain, no snow. And in fact, both games are not going to be affected by the weather, which is something that I'm glad about. But you look at this Bills defense, and they survive on turnovers. All they do is stop people once they get to the red zone with turnovers. 40% of opponent drives are getting to the red zone. That's the second worst. Now you have a Chiefs team that doesn't turn the ball over. 8 straight games without a turnover. Obviously, they have all their offensive weapons back, and the Bills are dealing with some key injuries in the secondary. We'll see if Benford or Rapp can go. So I like the Chiefs to score in the mid to high 20s, and I like the Bills to get there as well, because when Josh Allen has been quarterback, he's gotten 24 or more points 12 straight times. They put up 30 against the Chiefs in the first meeting and had a couple of failures down low when they got close to scoring. And this Chiefs run defense has fallen apart lately, and that's what the Bills love to do. They have been running the ball against the two best run defenses in the league, Baltimore and Denver, and now the Chiefs are not as good as their season-long numbers indicate. I love both teams to score. We'll get over the total.
I like that over call. I'm playing basically the same thing with a different angle, and that's both teams to score at least 20 points at -115. Neither defense looked great last week, while both teams scored 23 plus against what I believe are tougher defenses for both matchups there. The Chiefs have failed to hit 24 times in motivated games, throwing out that Week 18 game, obviously. And the Buffalo injuries in the secondary Larry's talking about has me liking them over 23.5 as a play. That got a little too pricey at -140 for me to put in here. So I went with this both teams to score 20 because Buffalo's missed 20 just once in a motivated game, and they avenged that game last week. That was the Baltimore game where they lost. They only scored 10 points, and then they showed up with a different game plan, and they were able to execute and score 27. So I think both these teams are getting to 20 pretty comfortably, and this game probably reaches the 50s when all is said and done.
Love that play, RJ. I'm going to play the Chiefs on the money line here. I'm not jumping off of the bandwagon right now. And it really comes down to price point here. We're not even talking about a field goal favorite. So we're talking about a money line, 125 -130, that frankly I think should be approaching -150, around 60%. Just until we see otherwise. When you talk about home field advantage and how it's diminished a bit in the NFL, I think that is true until you get to this point, until you get to such a bitter rivalry at home for the Kansas City Chiefs. I trust Patrick Mahomes in this spot. I love the fact, if you're backing the Chiefs, that the weather's not going to impact things, because that is certainly advantage Buffalo if you do get the elements. So I think this is a great spot to back Kansas City. We obviously know the motivation is at an all-time high, looking for a three-peat, but it's a team that I think we're going to see the ball in Patrick Mahomes' hands a lot. Possessions will be limited in this game because of how each team plays. So give me Patrick Mahomes here and the Chiefs minus 130.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised by that call, Mike, and I don't fault you for it. I had a friend on a text thread ask Brinson, who do you like in this game? Are the Chiefs going to win? And I was like, I like the Bills, but the Chiefs could win. You similar to the Baltimore and Buffalo game. You can be confident in an outcome, but you can't be surprised if the outcome goes the other way. And I'm confident the Bills find a way to go into Arrowhead and finally get this monkey off their backs and go beat the Chiefs in the playoffs and advance to the Super Bowl. But if Patrick Mahomes wins and goes to the Super Bowl again, I'm not going to be sitting here how could I have not seen this coming, right? I just think Josh Allen, with getting a chance to vanquish Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes in back-to-back games after kind of having the MVP sort of taken away from him, so to speak. We see the all-pro voting. I think he's supremely motivated. Joe Brady's calling a great game plan. They can run the football really, really well. And I think if you go in there, you pound the football, Allen makes some plays down the field, uses his legs, and force Mahomes to be completely perfect, the Bills can finally steal one and get out of here. You like all that confidence that I got there, totally narrative-based and brimming with confidence that the Bills are going to beat the Chiefs finally. It has to happen at some point. Let's get to some player props, and we'll start with the Chiefs. Mike, you and Larry both have an Isaiah Pacheco prop in tow that I think makes a lot of sense, just given his usage of Kareem Hunt's presence, right?
Yeah, it's really the presence of Kareem Hunt. We're going under on the rush attempts, under 8.5. I just think 9 is a big number that kind of maybe maps to a very winnable regular season game, but not a postseason game where I think that they're going to be neutral or potentially trailing in this game. And simply talking about limited possessions, because we know the Bills can really eat some time of clock or time of possession as well. And it's Kareem Hunt. They're going to find ways to give him the ball, particularly in that neutral game set where you're talking about pass protection and passing. We've seen Samaje Perine out there as well. And let's not pretend that they want to take the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands, because they certainly do not. And they've got creative playmakers like Xavier Worthy they can use around the line of scrimmage. I think this is easy under here on Isaiah Pacheco.
You said the key, Mike. They don't want to take it out of Mahomes' hands. The last 3 meaningful games that they have played this season, 70% pass rate. And now he's got all of his weapons back. And Kareem Hunt was more effective than Isaiah Pacheco in that last playoff game. Pacheco's had 5 carries and 6 carries for 18 yards in his last 2 games. I like your look under 8.5. I'm going to play the rushing yards under 35.5.
When I'm looking at Chiefs prop, I wanted to focus on this player that I don't know if anybody's heard of, young up-and-comer in this league, going to do a lot of great things, named Travis Kelce. And I think he's going to score a touchdown. I'm taking him anytime touchdown, plus 130. Kelce's played 19 playoff games since Mahomes took over at quarterback, scored a touchdown in 14 of them, including last week. Has not had a great season this year, but we saw vintage Kelce last week when it matters. Had the highest yardage in a playoff game since the Super Bowl loss to the Bucs a long time ago. Consider how many playoff games we've seen with the Chiefs since then. It feels like ages ago. I don't trust the middle of this Bills defense that was beat up by Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews last week. I expect Kelce and Noah Gray and maybe even Jared Wiley to be heavily involved as the Chiefs look to take advantage of those matchups, and I think it will lead to Kelce getting an anytime touchdown. I'm surprised it's plus 130. I thought it'd be a lot closer to even odds.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's at this point, we just can't be surprised when the playoffs get here and Travis Kelce morphs from, maybe he's old and washed, to he looks like the best tight end in football again. It's just what he does. It's how the Chiefs play these things. And I think that's a great look at plus 130, RJ. One of the guys you mentioned, Noah Gray, his over-under for receptions is just 1.5. And I'm looking towards the over on that. I think you'll see the Chiefs do some stuff with Xavier Worthy, whether it's gadget plays and stuff like that. But I think they'll also have some stuff schemed up for Noah Gray, because he's a really good receiving tight end and would probably be a legitimate fantasy option if not for the presence of Travis Kelce. Well, the Bills are going to key in on Kelce because they saw what he did against Houston last week. They really could have scored twice, honestly. And I think that'll leave Noah Gray open. They run a lot of these sort of for lack of a better term, like shadow concept routes where Kelce will run his route a little bit deeper and Gray will run the same route underneath or vice versa. And you just see the defenses focus on Kelce with good reason. And that's going to leave Noah Gray some opportunities here. I think he can get to 2 catches fairly early if they want him involved in that game plan. On the Bills side, I've got an anytime touchdown scorer here, and it's Josh Allen. I said it last week. That was free money, man. Dude scored twice. He's running with it, using his legs. It's the playoffs. He is going to be more active probably in this game than he has all throughout the postseason. And I don't think he's going to care about that injured hand. I think he's going to take off running. I think they'll have some designed runs for him. I think they'll use him in short yardage, and I think they'll definitely use him down by the goal line, just like they did against Baltimore, because they know when they get it in his hands, because 17 has the ball by the goal line, he is probably going to score. You heard Tony Romo talk about it, and I think we see him find the end zone again. Mike, you were also on a Josh Allen prop here.
Yeah, just simply going to attack the rushing yards. We've seen him in a lot of playoff games outside of really the last one against Baltimore, but against Kansas City specifically, he's going to take off and run. And you have to start to question the mental side of it, right? He's not beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs yet. He's going to put a lot of pressure and shoulder a lot of this load. I think that this is a spot where we see him keep the football in his hands and try to make plays, whether it works out for their benefit or not. I think this is a great spot to back him. I know that this is a big number, but I expect him to run the football a lot in this game and have at least one big 25-plus yard carry here. So if you can find a longest rush prop as well, I would attack it here on Josh Allen.
And James Cook's number is only a few yards higher than Josh Allen, which to me is disrespectful. This is my favorite play that we're going to talk about in the entire show. James Cook over his rushing yards. He had 120 against Denver, 67 against Baltimore, which is by far the best run defense in the NFL. And you talk about the Chiefs, they were giving up 3.5 yards before contact to Joe Mixon last week, and Joe Mixon ripped them for 88 yards. And the workload that James Cook is getting, 40 carries so far in the playoffs, 187 rushing yards already. I absolutely love James Cook because the Chiefs, if you go back to week 12, they are giving up 4.95 yards per carry to opposing running backs. James Cook is going to get his.
And to Larry's point, I mean, you look at what the Bills have been doing lately and using Alec Anderson as an extra offensive lineman, and that really gives them mismatches in the run game that they didn't have. And I think that's why they had success against the Ravens, just chewing up 4 yards every single time, essentially, where in the past you see this Bills team, they would, hit a 0 or 1 yard run and then give up on the run game and then just let Allen do his thing. So I think that's a sharp look. I couldn't really get there with Allen or Cook, so I went to the Bills pass game. And I don't know if you've seen this pass game. I don't know what you do with this pass game. It could be different guys every single week. Khalil Shakir is kind of like the reliable guy, but his numbers are pretty high. So I kind of went receiver roulette and say, who do I want to take an under on here? And I went Keon Coleman under 1.5 receptions. He's had just one catch in 5 of the last 6 games when you throw out that meaningless week 18 game, where, by the way, he had 10 targets and only 2 catches. And I think that might have, Josh Allen might have been watching that and been like, I don't know if I can trust this guy in the playoffs if you're only going to catch 2 of those passes. He's well behind the other receivers with a catch rate of just over 50% on the team. You cannot afford drops in such a critical setting when you're trying to beat the Chiefs here and finally get rid of the boogeyman and get to the Super Bowl. So I don't know that he's going to get many looks. And even if he gets more than 2 targets, talented Chiefs cornerbacks can hold a rookie in check. I think they're probably more talented than he is at this point in his career. So I think it's going to be very tough for him to get over 1.5 receptions unless he, for some reason, is a key part of the game plan this week, like he hasn't been in the last few weeks. So like him going under 1.5 receptions at minus 110.
Yeah, that's a pretty good look because, you talk about a guy, like he's flash potential this year, but he's had some really bad drops. And I think, just if you go back and look at Joe Brady's history, he may be more inclined to trust someone like Curtis Samuel in some of these spots just because he's had success with him. He knows him. He's a trusty veteran. And maybe he's even a decent first touchdown scorer look. There are a ton of guys with low numbers here. Curtis Samuel all the way up to 35-1. I think that's interesting. You know what? Bleep it. I'm gonna go for a Hail Mary here, Larry. I'm gonna take Mac Hollins, first touchdown scorer, 30-1. You got a bunch of guys, Josh Allen 6-1, James Cook 8.5-1, Kelce 9-1, and then you start to get into maybe some of the other tertiary skill guys. But Mac Hollins, this guy just shows up for random spots, dresses weird. I like Mac Hollins 30-1. Your thoughts on first touchdown scorer?
Well, I will also go a little bit down the board. I'll go with the tight ends. Either Dalton Kincaid or Dawson Knox, I think, has some value because you've seen this Chiefs team really get ripped by tight ends throughout the year. 6 catches, 70 yards per game on average. They're healthy with the outside cornerbacks who are all very, very good. And I think when you get down there, it's going to be either a Josh Allen run or maybe he fakes the run and then tosses it right over the middle to a big tight end.
Yeah, I think Travis Kelce is the way to go at plus 850. I'm already taking him to score a touchdown. Might as well make it the first touchdown. If Christian Benford is not cleared for this game, he is in concussion protocol. I might want to look at Marquise Brown plus 1,500. A little bit easier matchup for him to get a downfield pass with no Benford in the game. So those are probably the ways I'm looking at first touchdown.
I'll look at Xavier Worthy. I just think there's so many creative ways that Kansas City can use him. And I do think Kansas City comes out actually pretty aggressive here, maybe a deep shot down the field. And we've seen, many times this year where he's just simply lost track of where he is on the field, or else we'd have several more Xavier Worthy highlights to talk about. And I think that this is where the matchup makes sense when you look at this Bills secondary. So just the number of ways they can use him. I like the price point here on Xavier Worthy.
All right, just 4 teams remaining, and we have Super Bowl picks to make. Will the Chiefs pull off a three-peat in New Orleans? Will the Bills finally get there? Can the Commies make history with Jaden Daniels, or will it be the Eagles? We will tell you our best bets to win the Super Bowl coming up next on The Early Edge. Welcome back to the Early Edge NFL Pick Show Conference Championship Weekend. Will Brinson, Larry Hartstein, Mike McClure, and RJ White. We have given you our best bets for every game, as well as player props for every team. But wait, there's more. You can still bet on a team to win the Super Bowl. It's kind of funny, too, because, I don't know, what were for these teams are the odds are not drastically different now that you get to just 4 teams left, and everybody is plus money, which is really intriguing. So Larry, if you want to dabble in one team to win the Super Bowl, who would you dabble in and at what odds?
Well, I had the Ravens beating the Eagles for about the last 7 weeks or so, and I can't go with the Ravens anymore, so I'll go with the Eagles. I just think the AFC game is such a toss-up, whereas the Eagles are playing at home with the number 1 defense, with Saquon Barkley. I think they're going to escape against the Commanders, and I'm really not sure who's going to make it out on the other side, and maybe those 2 weeks give Jalen Hurts a chance to get back to himself for the Super Bowl, and they ride that defense and Saquon Barkley to the championship at plus 180.
I like the Eagles call, Larry, because I think they're going to be there in a Super Bowl rematch against the Kansas City Chiefs right here. This is what we're going to see again. Same outcome, Kansas City on top. Patrick Mahomes going to be a phenomenal career, obviously, but I think he gets the three-peat. I think it really happens here. I love the way Kansas City is set up with a home game against a team they beat time and time again in the Buffalo Bills. I like the Chiefs here, and I don't mind the sprinkling right now on the exacta of Chiefs over Eagles.
I had the Eagles over the Bills before the playoffs started. I just don't trust Jalen Hurts right now to get it done. You look at offense in 2025. Are we really going to have a Super Bowl champion that is a 1970s running back in defense? It just feels wrong to back that at this point, based on what we know about the NFL right now. AFC Championship can go either way. If Benford's out, it's going to be tough for the Bills to win. I will back Josh Allen to make enough plays. So I'm going to stick with an Eagles-Bills matchup, but take the Bills as the slight winner over the Eagles just based on how Jalen Hurts is playing.
Yeah, and I'm sort of in the same boat, RJ. If you tell me the Chiefs three-peat, I'm not going to bat an eye. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Patrick Mahomes is well on his way to being the greatest quarterback in NFL history. Sorry, Tom Brady. And I still think, though, that Josh Allen has a real chance to pull off the upset on Sunday. And if he gets to the Super Bowl, whether it's against the Commanders or the Eagles, I think he will just raise his game to the next level, go win a Super Bowl, the first Super Bowl for the Bills, and just supplant himself in an all-time pantheon of Buffalo athletes, which could mean he could win the Super Bowl MVP. And I would guess that his odds for the Super Bowl MVP are pretty good. Larry, if you are picking the Eagles, does that mean that this is where the Eagles would actually gets a little tricky? Like Saquon Barkley has lower odds to win Super Bowl MVP than Jalen Hurts. Which side of the coin do you want, Larry?
Rightfully so. It's defense and running like the 1970s, like RJ said. And either matchup he gets against the Chiefs or the Bills is very doable for Saquon Barkley to gash them for 150 yards and a touchdown. So I do like him for the MVP. But Will, I just got to say, I'm getting such a sense of deja vu because I've been down there in this beautiful Florida studio each of the past 3 years around this time doing this show, and every single year Mike is on the Chiefs money line every single year, and I feel like I'm going to be here next year. They're going for the 4-peat, and he's going to be on it again, and he's been right every time.
Yeah, Mike, we're going to all be sitting here with like gray hair saying, I think Mahomes is going to win the 15th Super Bowl in a row. I assume that if you're backing the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, you think the look is Patrick Mahomes for MVP. Does anything else strike your fancy on the Chiefs side for that MVP value?
Yeah, it's Mahomes for sure. And I'll say more so this year than other years in the past, really. I mean, I know that Travis Kelce is playing well again at the right time, but I think it would take 3 touchdowns from Travis Kelce because, as Larry mentioned earlier in the show, we're talking about a 70% pass rate here for Kansas City in these important games. And when you look at the skill players that they're going to have in Hollywood Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, who is potentially going to be in his first Super Bowl, and Xavier Worthy, there's just so many options to spread it around that I don't think we get the concentration to Travis Kelce. So I think that the separation in the 275 versus the 200 for Kansas City to win the Super Bowl, if you're considering Kansas City at 2-1 to win the Super Bowl, I would take the extra value on Mahomes at plus 275 because I think the scenario that any other Chief wins it is extremely unlikely.
Yeah, and you got to remember the way that the Super Bowl MVP is voted on, you have this panel of people who are doing their job and then like as a side thing, scribbling down a name like before the game ends and turning it in so they can announce it right away. So it's like unless someone just has a bonkers performance, like you get an Edelman goes over the top, right, in a low-scoring game in terms of yards and catches, and he gets it, it's probably going to be that quarterback. Are you applying the same theory there, RJ, to the Bills if you're picking an MVP from Buffalo's side?
Well, there's barely any separation between the odds of Bills to win the Super Bowl and Josh Allen to win Super Bowl MVP, and there's good reason for that. If they win the Super Bowl, there's absolutely no chance anyone else gets it. I can make arguments, I think, for every other team. Maybe in Washington, I think Jaden Daniels, you can't argue against anybody but that dude. But the other two teams, you could have other situations. I did point out in my preseason or pre-playoffs futures betting strategy, take Saquon Barkley 22-1 at that point because it's only going to drop from there. And if they get to the Super Bowl, he's going to have a much more reason for being there than Jalen Hurts in the passing offense. So like that look before the playoffs started, like I like the Eagles. Now I'm going with the Bills. So I got to go Josh Allen at this point.
Yeah. I think if you're backing the Bills like RJ and I, you have to bet Josh Allen to win Super Bowl MVP. If you do that though, I think I would probably recommend a little sprinkle on James Cook at 60-1, just in the event that he gets there, runs wild, scores 3 touchdowns, the Bills have a blowout, and it's all James Cook. Just because 60-1 is such a long shot, just a little bit of a hedge. All right. It's already time to start talking about next season somehow. Who's going to win the Super Bowl? Who's going to be crowning the crown champion of the 2025 NFL season? Will it be Jared Goff? Lamar Jackson, maybe? We will give you our best bets to win the Super Bowl next year. Coming up next, after the break. Welcome back to the Early Edge NFL Pick Show Conference Championship Weekend Edition. Will Brinson, Larry Hartstein, Mike McClure, and RJ White. Well, it wouldn't be the week before Conference Championship if we weren't already looking for value next year, guys. And Mike, I think there's a little bit of a consensus here in terms of a team that we should target to win the Super Bowl in 2025 based on value.
Yes, I think we're all probably surprised I'm not standing here saying the Kansas City Chiefs, frankly. I'm looking at the Baltimore Ravens, though, plus 700. Look, I think that this team probably should have beat the Buffalo Bills. They're certainly on par with Buffalo and Kansas City right now. I would make them a favorite over the Kansas City Chiefs head-to-head, even at Arrowhead. So when I look at this particular team, I think the window is very much still open. They had some question marks defensively throughout the year, but I really think this team is going to be back and as good as ever. I think Kansas City might take a little bit of a step backwards, so I think this is the time for the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, they're not playing anymore, but right now they're still the highest power-rated team in the NFL, closed as a favorite in Buffalo. Ronnie Stanley's a free agent. Makari also on the offensive line. You got to re-sign those guys, or at least one of them, and the fullback, maybe you re-sign him. And Brandon Stevens. I mean, there's not that many pieces, guys, that are big free agents. You know, Lamar, Henry, Flowers, Roquan, Kyle Hamilton, all of those guys are coming back. Zay Flowers, and on and on. The core is there. The talent is there. Let's see if they can finally get it done in the postseason.
Yeah, and I mean, like, remember, they played that game without Zay Flowers against Buffalo. I mean, that's a pretty huge difference if you add him into that. I think the whole narrative about Lamar Jackson not being able to close in the playoffs is frankly a bunch of nonsense. It's just difficult to win in the AFC. I do think you could see Baltimore fairly easily next year, especially with Pittsburgh taking a step back potentially. Like, we don't know what their quarterback situation is. The Browns, I don't think, are going to be a huge threat. And then the Bengals, lose Lou Anarumo, and, we don't know what's going to happen with T. Higgins and, the Jamar Chase contract. So, like, there's still a lot up in the air. Baltimore could get the 1 seed easily. And then all of a sudden they have the bye, they have home field advantage throughout, and going into the playoffs, you wouldn't get as good a number as 7-1. So I think now, decent time to look at it. I like the Ravens. RJ, thank you for diversifying our panel here with a different pick.
Yeah, Ravens are with their talent level is the easy way to kind of think, and that's the first thing my mind went to as well. I saw everybody else had it. I said, let's get a little different. I looked at a team that was awful this year. Everything went wrong for them, and they finished 6-11. I'm looking at the 49ers at plus 1,600. Only the Ravens were better at net yards per play. So I expect them back to form next year when you think about how many injuries they dealt with, and they were able to overcome and still be efficient on offense, a quality defense. I'm not confident in the Detroit offense after losing Ben Johnson. Philly and Washington have to beat up on each other. NFC West seems winnable to me, and I think San Francisco has a good shot of sneaking in there, getting the number 1 seed again, and then just being a great value at 16-1 to win the Super Bowl once the playoffs start.
All right. Maybe looking a little further down the board. You mentioned a team, RJ, during the break that you kind of like.
Yeah, look at the Falcons at 60-1. I mean, they probably are upgrading at quarterback with Penix. We don't know how he is long term, but he looked better than Kirk Cousins, and he gives them more they can do on offense. Then you look at the set of weapons that he has throwing to guys, Drake London. We know Kyle Pitts hasn't really lived his potential, but Bijan Robinson can go full Saquon Barkley next year if there is a threat at quarterback, and really have a very, very good offense that just needs some defensive improvement from Raheem Morris, get some more talent in there. I think their plan at pass rusher was not great going into the year. I think that needs to be rectified, but if they do that, they're playing in a very winnable division, could easily end up with a 2 or 3 seed and make some noise in the playoffs.
How about go deeper down the board, take the Chicago Bears? They have won the offseason by getting Ben Johnson. And if they get Dennis Allen, that's a great defensive coordinator. I think the Lions are going to take a step back without their coordinators. The Vikings are going to take a step back with the uncertainty at quarterback. And the Bears have all the talent in the world. Maybe now they finally have the coaching.
And I'll take their division rival in the Green Bay Packers. What if the Packers are healthy next season? I think the NFC is wide open. Jordan Love, I love the talent here. Give me the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, I mean, look, it wouldn't be a early edge NFL pick show if I didn't note that the Rams at 28-1 are a little bit down the board there. I always like the Rams to win. I think the team that actually presents some value a little bit further down the board in that 30-1 or longer range is the Houston Texans. C.J. Stroud came out and said that he was sort of took it like for granted that he would be great again this year. This is a well-coached team, made it to the playoffs, tons of weapons. Great quarterback. I think the Texans now properly valued at 30-1. So maybe you want to splash on that a little bit. All right, that'll do it for us. Make sure and go to sportsline.com/join and get 60% off an annual plan with promo code WINNERS. You can also subscribe to the Early Edge podcast, our daily SportsLine betting podcast. For RJ, for Mike, for Larry, I'm Brinson. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys later.